Hello, everybody. It's Adam with the Pattaya News in the last week of September 2023, coming to you with what's popping in Pattaya. The past couple weeks, we've done long single-subject matters that have been really popular with our viewers. So we're going to keep that same format for this week. My topic this week is something we're asked very, very often here at the Pattaya News. It's something that many of you, especially those not very familiar with Thailand's laws or how Thailand does things in its legal system, will find interesting. Today, we're going to talk about three major things, and they all correspond together. Number one is why most Thai media, including us, does not do any investigative journalism. Number two, which that will lead into, is about defamation laws in Thailand and exactly what they are in a general, broad overview. And three is why media doesn't cover what's happening in the court process once you've heard somebody has been arrested. You guys will find that very interesting. So let's start at the very beginning. We're asked all the time here at the Pattaya News why we don't do investigative journalism. And what I mean by that is somebody sends us an email and says, hey, this business is ripping me off. Can you investigate them? Hey, my landlord is ripping me off. Can you write a horrible name and shame article on them? Now, although that may be common in many Western countries, it's not in Thailand. In fact, the only media that really does it in Thailand is media that's licensed overseas, so they're protected legally, not media like ourselves that are actually licensed here that could lose our license if we violated certain rules and restrictions around that. Now, there are some ways to do some investigative journalism, but for the most part, again, because of Thailand's defamation laws, it's a minefield. With us, it's not just about those defamation laws. It's the fact that it's not really the purpose of our paper, which is more about community and letting people know what's going on in Thailand. But quite frankly, we're a very small organization, and we don't have the resources, that's generally resources for large news organizations, to commit to a long investigation, which may or may not turn out okay in the end, and may or may not get a lot of views, clicks, likes, shares, etc., etc. Now, Thailand has so many organizations devoted to helping with people that are having problems. But a lot of folks are not aware of these organizations because many are only advertised in Thai. And yes, many of these organizations work very slow. But what Thailand wants you to do, which is the opposite of many Western countries, is versus make things go viral on social media or name and shame, what they want you to do is go through the proper channels, proper organizations, and not cause anybody to lose face or reputation. One of the big ones, for instance, that we often advise people to go through here is the Office of the Consumer Protection Board of Thailand. That's an official government agency who's really there to help people that are having problems with businesses, problems with especially property and land deals in Thailand. We send people to them all the time, and they are helpful, although the wheels of the bureaucracy system in Thailand tends to move a bit too slowly for many people's taste. Of course, there's lawyers, but legal fees in Thailand tend to be pretty expensive overall, so that's something that a lot of people don't want to go through. There's also ombudsmen in Thailand, mainly for people who have complaints with government agencies, including police, which is an option for those situations. There's even municipality and city hall. But for the most part, you won't find media doing investigative journalism just simply because they don't have the resources or it's a minefield in terms of defamation. Which brings me to Thailand's defamation laws. Almost anybody who's been here for even a little bit is aware that defamation in Thailand is a criminal offense. It can also be a civil offense, but unlike many Western countries, it's also criminal. There's been many attempts in recent years to try to overcome and get rid of the criminal penalties in Thailand because critics say that these criminal penalties prevent people from speaking out, including the media. The media doesn't necessarily have any extra privileges, although we're not as restricted as many Southeast Asian countries. We actually have a lot of rights. We don't necessarily have any extra rights in terms of defamation. However, relevant, competent, that's what they call them, competent, government officers like the police as well as City Hall, and of course, similar organizations are able to release statements, as are lawyers, and not necessarily be held accountable for defamation. Because defamation is criminal, you could be facing a lot of time in jail and on top of huge fines if you say something that's deemed defamatory to a business or an organization without one of those competent individuals also stating it. That's why you almost never see us say, the Pattaya News says this person did this. What we'll say instead is, police officer so-and-so, lawyer so-and-so, government officer so-and-so stated this and source them. That's very different than the West, but it also helps protect everybody legally in terms of defamation. Also, we're a digital company, and anything that you post online can also be held accountable to what's called the Computer Crimes Act. And the Computer Crimes Act could see you put in jail for many more years. And we're not even going to get into lèse majesté, which would be insults against the beloved royal institution of Thailand, which could be up to 15 years. So for the most part, organizations don't touch defamation and don't touch investigative journalism. Last thing I wanted to touch on, though, is we're often also asked at the news, so for instance, in a recent case with Hans-Peter Mack, who is a man who was cut up and put into a freezer, murdered here in Pattaya. We've been asked a lot what's going on in that case and with the suspects. Well, in Thailand, although the courts are not as close to the public as people think they are, generally, for the most part, unless the judge specifically releases information, which is very rare and usually only happens in cases of activists who have been protesting against the government or the royal institution, for the most part, court information other than the initial arrest, whether or not the defendant got bail, and the final judgment are not released. So everything that happens in between, it's not like it is in Western countries where everything's open, it's a show, it's on TV, everybody's following day to day like it's a TV show, what's happening in the case. That is not the case in Thailand. So that's why you don't see us reporting on it, because it's not allowed and it's not released. In terms of the final judgment, in some cases, those final judgments are released to the public. Again, especially in cases of activists protesting against the government, etc., or if it's a case deemed of high value to the public. But for the most part, they really aren't. And in many cases, and this is the same as Western countries, mediation and settlements are preferred, and often those are reached before it ever gets to a judgment and a final trial. And of course, those are not released or disclosed to the public at large. One other interesting thing that a lot of you may find interesting, and we get asked all the time here at the news, is why so many suspects in crimes immediately plead guilty in Thailand. When you read one of our articles and someone says, yep, that was me, I admit it, I was accountable. That's pretty rare in a lot of Western countries, and that's because here in Thailand, in most criminal cases, if you plead guilty immediately and immediately admit to having committed that crime, your sentence is reduced by 50%. Literally, right there. And you can also be seen as an honest, good person, and and as a result, your court case could be further reduced after that. So it's actually huge advantage for many suspects to immediately plead guilty or immediately say that they were responsible. Hopefully you guys learned something today. It was just a general overview, not getting too in-depth about the nitty-gritty, but I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll continue these somewhat informal chats on a regular basis, letting you know about news and things in the news in Thailand. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow for regular updates. Take care of yourselves and each other.